The Box Seat, brought to you by our stable of sponsors: Woodland Stud, New Zealand Bloodstock Standardbred, Brecken Farms, Stonewall Stud, IRT, it's your horse and our passion, Australasian Wide Garrard's Horse and Hound, Ricciero Racing Stables, Lincoln Farms, the clubs Alexandra Park, Cambridge Raceway, Ashburton Trotting Club, Addington Raceway and Harness Racing New Zealand. Well, it's Cups Week in Auckland. Hi everyone, welcome to this edition of Your Box Seat. Yes, brought to you by our stable of sponsors. Michael Guerin, we have not only the Trillion Trust Auckland Cup, but the Reharvest Row Cup, two of the great races on our harness racing calendar.
Yeah, hi Greg, big hi to everybody watching around New Zealand and of course, further afield. First time we've ever done this. First time we've had the Cup, the Auckland Cup, which is still one of our top three races, alongside the Row Cup, which is one of our top two trotting races. So you could make the case this is our biggest harness night of the year. Of course, the 2 days in Christchurch being day meetings, Greg. It's an interesting cup because there's something for everybody. If you love a short-priced favourite and you think Self Assured is nearing champion status, great. You can back him with Natalie Rasmussen aboard now. Or, Greg, punters have the options to get involved in horses they know well. A horse like South Coast Arden, for example, at $15. And then, of course, there's the multi-plays. The TRB have opened the books on the four major races already. So we're going to try and work out how you can make some money out of this, Greg. But there are some quite remarkable stats around the big two in particular you're going to hear about in the next 55 minutes or so.
Yeah, looking forward to getting into it. An in-depth look at the Trillion Trust Auckland Cup. They are racing for $400,000. So let's go back to last week, the inaugural running of the $75,000 Roy Purdon Memorial. Let's get Aaron White to bring them home and then hear from the successful co-trainer and driver, Mark Purdon of Self Assured.
Now Self Assured can go still in front. Self Assured grinding away on the outside. Can go Self Assured. Bad to the bones, not done with. Self Assured on the outside. It can go. Who kicks? Oh, Self Assured, I'd say a nose. Self Assured maybe just a nose over Can Go, and they will follow Bad to the bone.
Well, Mark, you've stolen part of Alexandra Park. It's still on your face and on your colours. It was pretty wet out there. Not a bad performance to come from off the speed and wind from Self Assured.
Yes, yeah, I think he sort of won it at the start. Like he made a great beginning and ended up three back, which I envisaged probably being back further than that. But yeah, I think that just being so handy to Kango, at the turn, that was what won it.
That must be very confidence building heading into the Auckland Cup next week. The fact he did step away quite so well.
Yes, yeah, for sure. Mickey stood up there really good, and he didn't even feel like making a mistake.
It's been a long campaign. He's been a very busy horse since the middle of February. How does he feel to you? Is he racing as well as he has at his peak this campaign?
Yes, definitely. I thought tonight he might have been a little bit vulnerable. I just didn't think we just gave him a quiet week after his last start. So, I thought he might have been a bit vulnerable tonight. But he felt great, and then down the back and that he felt like a winner.
Any concerns going back to next week? It's going to be a full-ish front line of horses and therefore more chance that he could be, slightly claustrophobic in a situation he hasn't been in for a long time.
Yeah, it could be, Mick. He's had enough practice now, and I was wrapped with the way he stood up there tonight. So, I'm sure he rises to the big occasions, and I'm sure he'll be good.
It's never nice to have a name raced after your dad in a memorial because obviously that means he's passed away. But it's lovely you could win this, and your dad would have enjoyed watching that because I know there's nothing he loved more on Friday night than watching you and Barry and all the grandkids doing their job.
Oh, yes, yeah, absolutely, Mick. I think we gave him longevity watching us, and he got a lot of great thrills along the way.
Just going forward after next week in the Auckland Cup, Mark, I know there's doubts not only about this horse, he's not going to Queensland, but you're starting to doubt the entire Queensland campaign?
Yeah, just the way it's working out. Mac Dan was another sort of on the list, but Danny and I have spoken, and he'll go back to Victoria, probably have a little break, and then be prepared in Victoria. And Spankham got cooked there last year, so I can understand the connection, not wanting to risk it again.
8th win for him in this campaign of 14 races, Michael, since the Canterbury Classic back on the 1st of October. So it's not only been a busy season, but a very successful one for him. And that was a top-class performance off the 20 metres last Friday night.
Initially, Greg, when you watched the race, you thought, well, the Auckland Cup is over. And maybe it is, but we'll get to that in a second. Very commanding. And the standing start was my initial concern because obviously it's been a long time since he'd had a standing start. That proved to be not a factor. Now, he was off 20 metres, Greg, so this week he heads to the full front line, and I thought maybe if there's going to be a twist in this race, it's going to be if he draws 1, 2 or 3, and he gets a bit upset. Well, of course, Greg, he's drawn 6 with 3 horses outside him on the unruly, so therefore back. It couldn't have worked out any better. It's just inch perfect for what they want, Greg. It's remarkable when you think about Self-Assured. You think he is vulnerable from a standing start. Here's one of those stats I was talking about. 17 standing starts, 10 wins, 6 placings. And often he's off a handicap, and he's only missed the money once, and that was when he completely blew a start. So quite remarkable, Greg. He's not quite as vulnerable as people would think. And that vulnerability at the end of a very tricky campaign is far more evident in some of the big names. And one of those is South Coast Arden. At the start, missed away terribly. Both of us have spoken to Brent Mangos. He was happy enough with the performance, Greg, but all of a sudden, interrupted campaign. He has standing start manners concerns, as does AG's White Sox. And he's a $15 chance, Greg. So while Self-Assured went ahead last week, South Coast Arden, whether only in our minds or via the standing starts, has gone backwards in the market. And that's an enormous discrepancy from the last time these two horses met over 2 miles from a standing start. Of course, the New Zealand Cup, the second Tuesday in November.
Yeah, when they finished second and third behind. Copy that, of course. When you think about horses capable of winning back-to-back Auckland Cups, Delightful Lady, El Sue, there are a couple that spring to mind. He certainly has the credentials to be able to do that. Chokum was another one in the last 40 years to have been able to achieve that. He appears to be in that sort of air, Michael. I think he deserves to be the hot favourite that he is, and if he steps away with Natalie aboard, he's going to take some beating for sure.
Well, ironically, it's not back-to-back, is it, Greg? Because he actually won the Cup in 2019.
But winning 2 cups is what I mean.
Yeah, then Amazing Dream won it in 2020, beating Spankham. God, that seems a long time ago.
It does.
And they didn't have a Road Cup, an Auckland Cup last year. So I agree with you. He can definitely win 2 cups. Where he sits, I suppose we can discuss on this show next week if he in fact does pull that off. Because he's now in round 2 of his career, Greg. He's won the Triple Crown.
Yep.
He's won the Triple Crown, which didn't exist till this year, but now the race is here, it does. So what he has now to embellish himself is the chance to clock it again, like on Space Invaders, go round again and see if you can do it again. And then maybe head to Australia, Greg, and try and get a major win over there. So that's all in front of Self-Assured. Do I think he'll win this week? Yes, I do. I think, Greg, the only concern is the standing start if he happens to blow it, and you never know that with horses. But if he steps away, I think the horses who would potentially park him are South Coast Arden, maybe AG's White Sox, and they're off the unruly. So if you take them out of play, say everybody's stepping in the same way, then the most likely horse to be in front can go over 2 miles, Greg, I think would hand for $400,000 winning stake, because the second stake's big money. In fact, it'd be the biggest money of Kango's career.
Yep.
And Spankham's the other one. And I don't see the stablemate with Tony Hurley remarkably going for his 9th Auckland Cup. I don't see him parking Self-Assured, Greg.
Yep.
So I think he could get things his own way if he steps. Where this race changes, in my belief, is if he is 2 lengths slow and South Coast Arden gets past him, or AG's White Sox gets past him, and they say, this is our chance. Even Cranbourne, Greg, gets past him. So the start is crucial. I expect him to get it right, because those stats suggest he can. One more stat for you. Over 3,200 metres in his career, Self-Assured, 4 starts. He won the New Zealand Cup. He won the Easter Cup, the last Easter Cup. He won the Auckland Cup, Greg, and he's run second to Hard Copy, or Copy That, sorry, and Copy That got in front in the New Zealand Cup. So really, he's been almost unbeatable over 2 miles. Here is what I believe is the danger, Greg. This is Spankham over a far more suitable mile, but what you're seeing down the outside here is Self-Assured, absolutely outstanding. And of course, Cranbourne, very brave. By the way, the runner-up in that race, Greg, Hot and Treacherous. He is out of the race this week. He pulled a muscle and therefore has headed to the paddock. But when you see Spankham doing this, Greg, he reminds you how good he is, but Do you think he's quite as good over the 2 miles?
No, I don't. I'll talk about that in just a moment. Here's the last big 2-miler, of course. Copy that, takes it out. South Coast Arden was off the unruly on this occasion. He was very brave, as was Self Assured, who came off the second row. So that was their latest performance over the 2 miles. And look, I don't doubt that both of them are outstanding stayers, and therefore, if South Coast Arden is able to step away, he has a big part to play in it. And you mentioned the discussion you've had with Brent Mangos. Sectionally, he was quite happy with him last time, but he can't possibly afford to have a gallop at the start. This was him in the flying mile, and here's AG's White Sox. Well, he's absolutely low flying at the moment, got so close to hot and treacherous in this one. Spoke to Greg Hope this week. He's definitely heading to Luke McCarthy's, definitely heading to the Constellations, where both the Sunshine Sprint and Black Safake are mobile races. There's about $500,000 on offer there for him, Michael. And of course, he's already won a Ballarat Cup and been placed in a Miracle Mile when he finished 4th and behind King of Swing. So I give him a really big chance, AG's White Sox. He's drawn the outside of the 3 unrulies, which again I think it gives him a big part to play. The one drawn in between them, of course, is Cranbourne. The race we're going to have a look at for Cranbourne is at Addington Raceway, when he rated a sensational 154.1. He was in front beating Alta Wise Guy, better twist to his outside, and he was big and strong in this Group 3, Michael, and he's raced super since then as well.
I think all 3 horses on the unruly are in the same position. If Cranbourne steps lightning quick, gets in front of Self Assured, potentially gets the lead, I'm not saying he would, but if he did, then he's a factor, a big factor. South Coast Arden, the same. I'm not sure he's racing quite as well as he was 2 months ago, but of course, it's been a long campaign. I doubt many of these are. And AG's White Sox is the same. But Greg, that all comes down to the start. If you back these horses, they have to get in front of Self Assured. Because if they don't, then Self Assured has the option to move in front of them, and if he's sitting on their backs, he'll beat them. And if he gets in front of them and decides to park them, he'll probably beat them. So the start's absolutely crucial in that regard, Greg, and that's really guesswork. I mean, we can say what we think might happen at the start, but you can only bet on the thought that everybody goes away relatively evenly and what happens next after that. So I went Self Assured clearly on top, Greg, and Spankham just as clearly second, even though I'm not sure Spankham can win because he's never been a natural 2-mile horse. The one thing I would say is he did come from behind Self Assured and beat him in a Methven Cup, which was basically 2 miles, 3,000 metres on the grass, Greg. So there's that one glimmer of hope, but I think his Auckland Cup was about 18 months ago when Amazing Dream managed to beat him, and I think Self Assured's a better horse than Amazing Dream.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that, Michael. He's been placed in all of the big ones, as New Zealand Cup placing as well when second. But yeah, I just don't know that he's so potent over the 2 miles, and he just seems to find one a bit better than him. Looking at the market, so $1.50 for Self Assured, $7 for Spankham. Then you're out to Kango. Nothing to knock on his most recent form, Michael. $10, $11 Cranbourne, AG's White Sox 11, and I reckon there'll be some takers for South Coast Arden at around $15. I think it's our oldest big race, 1890. Commodore won it the first time. It is a great race, the Auckland Cup, and I'm sure this week will be no different. How would you, if you're having a single bet in it, Michael, how would you play it?
It depends if Self Assured stays at the $1.50. That's close enough to the mark if he happened to get out to $1.70, which I don't think will happen because Natalie's driving strike rate is so good. I think he might even come in. $1.70, I'd back him, Greg. I'd be more than happy to back him. Clearly, he's top pick for almost everybody involved. I would almost just take a Quinella. I genuinely think Spankham with Hurley on works to the lead, probably. And I think if Self Assured comes knocking it hands up, and if they're lead trail, they'll run 1-2 because I don't think the others are good enough, no matter how well they're racing, Greg, to come around them. So you can make a case for a fixed odds Quinella there, or in fact even a fixed odds Exacta, which, because it's fixed odds, will give you a slightly bigger dividend for what's relatively the same result. So Self Assured on top for me, not changing the wheel there, Greg. How do you see the Trillium Trust Auckland Cup?
Yeah, well, he's clear top pick, no question about that at all. I think AG's White Sox, I'd probably play around top 3, top 4 for him, because the way he's racing, I can't see why he wouldn't finish in the top 4. He's in sublime form, so I'm happy to go with him and probably back him in both spheres, top 3 and top 4, because it does hurt, Michael, if you don't take them for top 4 and they run 4th.
It does. I also think if you didn't know AG's White Sox, because he's been away from us for such a long period during the season, and you only took him on his runs in the Messenger and the Flying Mile at Cambridge, he would actually be close to second pick. He was so good in both races, and I'm just not sure about the standing start, but I'm not sure about the standing start for any of them, Greg. Sounds like this is the last race for Better Twist.
Yes,
so
it does.
That's a wonderful career, and just goes to show how hard it is to go from 3-year-old racing to racing these type of horses. And of course it does raise the question, we'll get to the other contender for this in a second, but a Self-Assured wins, Greg, because of course the season now goes from January 1 to December 1. He's an awfully long way toward being Pacer of the Year and potentially Horse of the Year. He would have won the race, he would have won a whole bunch of lead-up races, and he would have won the Auckland Cup. There's 2 sort of big ones to go after that, but I don't think the free for all attracts too many votes. The other horse on the flip side of that coin, Greg, of course, is defending Horse of the Year champion Sunday Sun. So these extra little bits of bonuses that come into these races, I know it doesn't change anybody's life, Greg, but everybody wants to have the Horse of the Year, and Friday night could go a long way to determining that, even with a long, long way to go in the season, because the one who loses, Greg, if in fact either of them do, finds himself on the back foot.
Yep, they certainly do that. Before we get to the Reharvest Row Cup, which is over the 3,200 metres, of course, understand SENZ, Michael, Beaver will be on course broadcasting out of Alexandra Park through the drive show, so there's a little bit more exposure for the sport, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, and Harness Racing New Zealand's going to have a special lift out. You can download it and print it out if you'd like to read your stuff in your hands. That'll be during the week. I think it'll come out Wednesday or Thursday with Emily and David and Everard and the team there. And then the New Zealand Herald's going to have a full page of just harness racing, Greg, just previewing this race. And that'll be online, of course, too. So considering the time of year, Greg, they've done pretty well. And this is the one bonus of a later Auckland Cup, is you're not smack bang up against the good galloping races, even though there's a good meeting in Brisbane on Saturday. So that allows you some clear air there. The discussions around whether the Auckland Cup sits well in the last Friday of May, Greg, I think we can leave those to next week. We can have an opinion. I think we are all, as an industry, learning together about that. The one thing I don't think we're going to see is a big crowd. It's incredibly hard this time of year as it gets colder in Auckland, because Aucklanders are softer than Cantabrians, Greg. And a lot softer than Southlanders. I don't think many people will be coming out to the racetrack. There'll be quite a few there, of course, but I do think the viewing audience at home will be really big. Yep. So the turnover figures will be interesting, and whether they are affected by those short prices, or whether in fact some of the punters want to get involved and have those big bets we see on harness racing at the $1.50s and the $1.40s. There's a lot to play out here, Greg, but there'll be lots of information in the marketplace. As you said, the Herald, Harness Racing New Zealand, SENZ, and of course the big fella will be on track on the night.
All right, Reharvest Row Cup. Let's go back to the H.R. Fiskin and Son Anzac Cup, and it was, of course, Sunday Sun doing it again. Home in 56.7.27.4. He is co-trained by Robert Dunn. We'll get to him post-race as Bolt for Brilliance edged just that little bit closer.
Sunday Sun, Bolt for Brilliance, inch by inch, getting close. Sunday Sun, this exceptional equine bags 3 Anzac Cups. Bolt for Brilliance second, third Midnight Dash.
Well, that was a bit closer than usual, Robert.
Well, it was really, Mick, but it was set up for Bolt to do that because he's got so much quick speed. And it's only that Sonny's so quick around the turns that put it, the distance between them was the winning and losing of the race.
I take it that if the same scenario unfolds next week in the Row Cup and you're in front and Bolt is on your back, John won't be so generous with the sectionals in the middle stages.
No, I wouldn't think so, no. We'll know that his forte is at staying. And as Johnny said afterwards, that's about as quick as he can go, but he can keep it going for quite some time at the same speed.
How's he holding together? Because it's been a long and really busy season. He looks great. How does he feel around the barn, and what's Craig's feedback on how the horse is handling life?
Yeah, it's great, really. Well, he settled in first of all to Pukekohe at John Street's just amazing. It's a beautiful complex, of course, so we're lucky with that. Craig takes him to the beach every second day, although this week he kept him on the track because Johnny came up last Friday after Cambridge, but they worked him together down at Waiku, and they were wrapped the way he trotted. So they thought he'd done enough work to be ready for this race, and he'll probably do a couple of quiet beach runs this week leading into the Row Cup.
This week, Harness Racing Victoria announced the Inter-Dominion Trotting final stake is going to $250,000. That's where it should be, Robert. How does that make you feel about potentially going to the Inter-Dominions?
Well, I think before that, Mick, we were thinking on going, because now with no races being in Auckland in December, it means after the Dominion you've got not a lot to look forward to for a wee bit. So the plan was to go across there, and then if we go there, of course, we stay on for the Great Southern Star. So I'm picking that'll be his first trip out of New Zealand.
Okay, so at the moment, you've spoken to Colin and Nancy, and the attitude is if things go well through the Dominion, you'll be parking up in Victoria for the summer. Is that what we are thinking will happen to Sunday Sun?
Look, four of us will have a talk about it, but we're thinking that's what we'll be doing, definitely.
All right, that's really interesting because, of course, on the 4th of December, as part of the mega day at Addington Raceway, New Zealand Trotting free-for-all's there at $100,000, so they might have to factor that in as well, Michael. But he was just simply too good. He's now a 3-time winner of the Anzac Cup, and he gets that opportunity this week to win 3 of the biggest of them all in the north, the Row Cup.
Yeah, look, he does, and it's incredibly hard to see him beaten, Greg. Much like Self-Assured, the one thing you thought, well, maybe Barrier 1 would make me nervous, although he did win it from Barrier 1 last year. I just don't see how they beat him unless something untoward happens, and it never looks like it's going to happen to him. He's trotting faultlessly, very squarely. He actually seems to trot even better at Alexandra Park, I think, than he does at Addington, Greg. Nothing bothers him. Rain doesn't bother him.
What about the way he gets around the bends, Michael? I mean, he put 2 lengths on his arch rival Bolt for Brilliance, 2, maybe even 3 lengths around that last bend, and that's what won the race for him, no doubt.
Yeah, and Bolt for Brilliance does tend to muck around a bit too, Greg. You can even see him in the trail. He just gawks. I don't know, he's a funny big horse, but man, he's got a motor. Yep. We all know it's going to happen this week if all that pans out the same. And that's going to be that if John gets the lead, he'll just go faster and faster for maybe the last mile. I think Bolt for Brilliance is getting closer. I'm just not sure how much closer. It was close last week, but I think it's a totally different type of race. I think he'll finish second. I think the worst thing could happen to Sunday Sun, Greg, apart from obviously galloping, which we hope doesn't happen, is if he gets the lead and Matuatana trots away. Now, Matuatana cut himself a little bit. It wasn't in a serious place on his leg, and I think he'll be fine. But he showed the sort of speed down the back straight there, Greg, that maybe Paul Nairn, if everybody settles in a pattern, launches him. Yep. And that can undo anybody, Greg, can undo any horse. And that's when you start saying, well, if that happened, could Bolt for Brilliance run past Sunday? So maybe he can, but it's incredibly hard to make that a betting argument, Greg. So for me, he has to be on top. I think he has to be on top for everybody. I think the tab's giving you fair enough money. I think $1.40 is fair. Yep. I think he paid $1.25 last week. And you can make a case for the multi. Bolt for Brilliance just as clearly has to be second pick, Greg. But there's enough there around Temporale, Matuatana, of course, Midnight Dash, and Five Wise Men in those 3 to 6 slots to give punters something to attack or try and make some money out of. So, yeah, again, we're not reinventing the wheel here, Greg. Everybody's seeing the same things week in, week out, and we've seen them for quite a while. But it's hard to make a case he gets beat. But I do think that if Matuatana gets away, there might at least be one section of the race where he's going to be paying a lot more attention than he had to last week.
Yeah, let's go back to his last 3,200 metre victory. It was in the sensational time of 3:56.6. That's Mataderos, who got back in winning form last Friday night. Bolt for Brilliance, Jim Curtin getting a little bit wider on the track, eventually gets into third, but not even in the same picture. Michael, I'm not suggesting they'll go this fast in the Reharvest Row Cup of 2022, but his superior staying ability should see him win 3 of these races, which puts him right up there in the Lyle Creek type sphere, because we know he was able to achieve the same.
And that was at the end of Lyle's career. There's no reason to think this horse doesn't come back this time next year, Greg, and win 4. You know, then you start getting into that and I'm not going to try and upset anybody here, but that Winx-like territory, because you only win the Group 1s 4 times if you're a very special type of horse. But that's a story for another day. Into Dominions is an interesting call, Greg. I think they've got to go. And well done to Harness Racing Victoria for boosting that stake to 250. Now, immediately, because harness racing people like to moan about stuff, there'll be people who are worried that the New Zealand free-for-all's 100,000. Well, now, we're not going to be putting 20 horses on the plane to Victoria, Greg. He might go, and if he goes, say Bolt for Brilliance might go. But they're not all going to go, Greg.
No.
If Sunday Sun's flying, he's in that form, and he goes, well then either Bolt for Brilliance or Muscle Mountain or something else will stay home, and Five Wise Men will be an older horse by then. Highgrove will be an adult by then.
Yep.
So there's going to be enough around, Greg. We can't have this thing
No,
where none of the Group 1 races clash.
And the other part to that, Michael, is when Heavyweight Hero won the race on New Zealand Cup Day, it gives a whole other pool of horses a chance to win a Group 1 at $100,000. What's wrong with that?
100%. Not all Group 1s are going to have all the best horses in them all the time. Cop the Kingsford Smith Cup this week in Brisbane. You know, it doesn't have the best sprinters in Australia. In fact, it has probably none of the top 10.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's not a Group 1.
No, that's
so
right.
I know there's a little bit of animosity and people get all angsty and you're ruining the New Zealand Trotting Free-for-all, but let's be completely honest. The New Zealand Trotting Free-for-all hasn't been in our top 2 or probably even 3 trotting races for the last decade because it's too close to the Dominion. It's not the Rowe Cup because of the stake, and then the New Zealand Trotting Championships always seems to be a really strong race, Greg, and you can make an argument the Anzac Cup's as strong as it.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to get too fretty about that, and yes, there's going to be some races clashing at different times, Greg, but as you said, that gives other horses a chance to win those, and it gives trainers a chance to make a decision, because take that race out of play, and say Muscle Mountain doesn't want to go clash with Bolt for Brilliance and Sunday Sun. Doesn't sound much fun to them. Well, then what does he do? Go to the paddock?
Yeah.
We're still betting on that Sunday afternoon meeting at Addington, so I've got no qualms with those two things clashing. And yeah, I think if we're going to try and invent a world, Greg, where none of our Group 1s clash with each other, we're going to need a few more weeks in the year.
All right, how do you play the Reharvest Rowe Cup? Mine's pretty simple. It's straight out win bet on Sunday Sun.
Yeah, look, you could do that. 100% agree. I'm a percentage better. You could take it as the multi with Self-Assured if you're that way inclined. I think Bolt for Brilliance is just as clearly the second best horse in the race as Sunday Sun is the best horse in the race. And again, fixed odds Quinellas and fixed odds Exactas are something most people listening to the show don't play. But the thing about them is you'll tend to get overs because the tote Quinella pool is small and most people back in the favourites. So therefore the Quinellas will be smaller. Whereas, for example, last week, Greg, I think the trotting race, the Anzac Cup, the trifecta on the tote was around 2.7, something like that. Earlier in the day, on the fixed odds trifecta, and it looked an absolute certainty, it was 3.9 because that's the way the equation works out for the computer. The computer thinks there's more chances in the race than there are because it's factoring them in at different rates. Just like last week on the show, we tipped out Midnight Dash at $1.55 a place. Sounds ludicrous. Who wants to take $1.55 a place? I think I paid $1.25.
Yeah, the trifecta was perfect, exactly what you said. Yep.
So I think there's a way you can play these things if you're someone who likes to bet in slightly bigger denominations, but don't be betting just for the sake of it. You don't have to have a bet. You can enjoy these horses for what they are. That's what I would do if I'm having a bet in the race. What have I done, Greg? I'm going to tell the punters the truth. I have had a multi-bet.
Yep.
I've had it on Self-Assured to win because I think he'll win. I've had Sunday Sun to win. That's 2.1. And I've added another horse, and I'll get to that in a few minutes.
Yeah, we'll preview that very shortly, as we will preview, I reckon, the race of the night. The Brecon Farms Northern Trotting Derby is a cracker. Looking forward to previewing that when we come back on the other side. Just before we go to that break, Jenny Fleming, she's been a big part of harness racing New Zealand for, I'm going to say, a quarter of a century. It's probably a little bit longer. She finishes up next week at HRNZ. She's done an enormous job. We wish her well in the future. Back after this quick break. Welcome back into your box seat. Before we get into a couple of the other features at Alexandra Park on Friday night, Michael, Jillaby Kung Fu returns to the racetrack. This is a horse that ran second in a Miracle Mile a couple of years ago.
Yeah, wonderful horse. Won the Chariots of Fire. Was trained by the Lees. down in Victoria, has now joined Belinda McCarthy, and we know what they can do with all sorts of horses. King of Swing obviously got better with them. Spirit of St. Louis has got better with them. He'll be heading to Albion Park this weekend, Greg. He'll be a huge factor in the Constellations if they get him back to his best. Wickedly fast horse, and not unusual in Australia, Greg. Now we've seen it with Lochinvar and Bling It On, mixing stud duties with racing duties, something we don't see a lot of in New Zealand, but he is having a good time in all arenas, Gregory.
Yes, he certainly is. Race number 7 there at Albion Park on Saturday night. Mr. Ibiza makes his debut. Also from the McCarthy team, takes on Speak the Truth and Tim's a Trooper as they build towards the derby there. With the Lone Star, let's go back and have a look at last week's Sire Stakes. Here's the all-important start. A couple of things I want you to look at here, Michael. El Conqueror having a gallop and dispatching itself from the field. It goes a long way back, and there's Highgrove having his hop and skip down on the inside, which effectively took him out of play. One from the outside there, the eventual winner, Masterly, in the famous colours of Paul Nairn, making its way to the lead. He distanced them at the bend. Just further back, you see the red cap of Paul Nairn and his other runner. Phenomenal run, really, from El Conqueror. But it was Bob Butt doing the business with Masterly, dashing up the Alexandra Park straight and doing this to them.
Masterly for the master of a trotting trainer in Paul Nairn, and he's going to get another Group 2 Lone Star New Zealand Sire Stakes 3-year-old.
Well, Paul, I know the favourite galloped out, but that was still a very dominant win for Masterly. Does that surprise you?
Well, he's got a lot of ability, and obviously when the favourite galloped, we thought we helped our chances.
Did you expect him to be able to win by that much in a Highgrove free race? Because he won by a panel.
Yeah, well, he's one of those horses. He's got a lot of natural ability, and he does everything so easily. Like you work him at home pretty smart times, and he just seems to do it so easily. So I suppose he's got that athletic ability that those good horses have.
You bought him here on Wednesday for track work, and you told me that was crucial to getting him exactly where you needed him for tonight.
Well, yes, he's just like a lot of young trotters. He's just tricky just to get rigged up right and to be trotting well, and just being able to bring him here on Wednesday and bowl him round. I did alter a bit of gear to improve him for tonight, and so it was well worthwhile doing that.
Any chance he can be a better horse for the Derby next week?
He's pretty fit now, Mick, so you can only get him so fit, but he's very well and healthy, and extra distance won't worry him.
You've bought a lot of wonderful young trotters here over the years that have gone on to be very good open class trotters. Is he one of those? Is he in that elite level in the future?
Well, that's a big question, but he seems to have the natural ability, so we're hopeful that he'll be a top horse. Yeah.
You must be enjoying it, mate. Got the family here, and your daughter Danae here. I can't remember seeing her at the races that often in the past, so she's starting to enjoy the horses. She's down the stables and hanging out with them.
Yeah, no, she's only 4, and she just about knows all our race horses by name without having to tell her. She'll pick them out, so she's got an eye for a horse already.
Is it one of those things that makes racing and training at your age more enjoyable, having your young daughter involved in that sort of stuff and knowing what's going on?
For sure, yeah. No, it gives you a lot of pleasure and take an interest, and yeah.
He's a big, proud trotter, isn't he, Michael Masterly? And he was simply too good. The big question this week is, can he beat Highgrove again? If Highgrove does everything right, gee, I reckon it's going to be one heck of a race.
Oh, it's going to be tasty, Gregory. I've got no idea what Highgrove's going to do. Last week they were of the opinion with the wet track the Mobile was going a bit slow, but most of the rest of them trotted away, so he's just got that in him. And maybe Greg will have it for a fair while. He's a big lump of a horse. His hooves are a long way from his brain. I don't trust him.
Thanks
and
for that.
The bookies are giving you 2.1, so it sounds luxurious compared with last week, but last week we hadn't seen that Masterly. Man, he was good. I didn't know he could do that. I know
First up at the park too, Michael. That doesn't happen often.
And look, I know he was really good beating the older horses 2 starts ago, but that's grass track racing. It very really equates to group racing quite that quickly. Straight out, I think Masterly deserves to be the favourite, Greg, because we're confident he'll trot away. We're not confident that Highgrove will trot away. And there's nothing to think that if they both trot Gregory toward the marker pegs and they're 1 and 2 at the 800, that Highgrove can go much better than Masterly did last week. And that's not trying to insult Highgrove because he's done some pretty amazing things. Great to have them both, Greg. And a really gorgeous little girl in Double Delight, who of course is the Harness Jewels winner. So, super race.
Yep.
I agree with you. I know later on we're going to talk about your bet for the race, but Masterly deserves to be top tip, and I wouldn't be surprised if he goes close to starting favourite over Highgrove. I'll be writing this week for lots of different publications, and I'll speak to John Dunn about where Highgrove stands and what his final track work was like and what in fact they can do with him. But yeah, Masterly's a good one, Greg. He's headed to open class, no doubts about that. Actually owned by a guy who was a long time, co-owned by a guy who was a long-time racing journalist, Mark Connors.
Yes.
Mark has done a lot for the industry. I mean, he's owned horses before, of course. But he had a trotting publication for a very long time in very difficult circumstances to put those things together. And he's basically been a trotting guy for his entire life. So really happy to see him have a top-class horse. I think it'll end up an open class, Greg. And I tell you what, it was great to see my old friend Paul Nairn at the races, Greg, being a dad. He's of an era now where, you know, he's got a very young daughter in Danae. We tried to get some shots of her on camera. She was loving it, having a great time, playing with the whip, the second Nigel. I don't know whether the camera, she was like, nah, I'm not even going to borrow
Not part of that.
So she's got good taste in men because she didn't want to borrow me or Nigel. She's like, no, you guys look like idiots. Keep away from me. But Paul's loving life, and yeah, really cool to see him with yet another good horse, Greg, because every couple of years he seems to churn out a good one. And this, I don't mean to preempt anything, Greg, but this one might be really, really good.
Yeah, the prices at the moment, so $2.10 for Highgrove, $2.50 for Masterly. Then you're getting out to the likes of Double Delight, who missed last week, $8. El Conqueror, who I think is a top 4. I'm not going to say a lock because obviously he needs to trot all the way, but gee, he was fantastic in that race. Mystic Max, who's no slouch, hot to trot, who got it wrong first up there. This is the race of the night for me. Can't wait for it. The Brecon Farms 2022 edition
Greg,
of the Northern Derby.
Just on that, raised a really interesting question too, and I spoke to Paul Nairn for that interview. He said he took the horses there on Wednesday morning to work them. It's crucial we keep allowing this access. Sometimes, you know, we have a lot of things going on at Alexandra Park and it's really hard to get there sometimes. But when those horses come north from the South Island, or even when horses go to Addington from the North Island, Greg, to allow and to have scheduled at least a couple of days a week where they can have track work, Greg, is crucial, because I believe had he not had that track work experience there, then we may not have seen that version of the horse. So well done to Alexandra Park, but yeah, we've got to make sure these tracks stay open, no matter how busy they are commercially, Greg.
Yep, certainly agree with that. Let's go back and have a look at the Magnifique, and what was the best maiden in the land got it done here with Magnus Benroe. That's her getting through on the inside. Monaco Grace is her name. She was simply too good with Samantha Otley aboard. We'll hear post-race from her about a couple of milestones recently and just how many winners she's driven at Alexandra Park.
Kaplan, Monaco Grace and Sam Otley. Monaco Grace to get the win. Second over Queen of Diamonds, then Mr. Kaplan, perfect bet.
Well, Sam, only your second Alexandra Park win. It's not a bad one to get with Monaco Grace.
Yeah, for sure. Like you say, it's my second win here, so it was great to get another one on the board, and super for that horse. It's her maiden win, so what a way to do it in a 50k race.
Gate speed's a big help. You must have felt relatively confident mid-race, but it got a bit tight at the end.
Yeah, you're never fully confident when you've got those big bangers around you. You know, I knew I was following the right one, but we had the hardest one to beat on the outside of us. But yeah, she put herself in the right spot. She got great gate speed and then relaxes, and yeah, it was tight on the line, but you know, I knew she had her head in front at the right time.
As you said, it was her first victory, and she's had a couple of high-profile seconds to horses like Artie's Express. By the time we get to the Oaks at the end of the year now, do you think she'll be an even better filly and more competitive?
You'd like to think so. Yeah, like you say, she's sort of had a few placings and had a few starts now, but she's sort of improving each time. So you'd like to think with a bit of a freshen up, hopefully she comes back bigger and stronger and can get a little bit closer to those other ones.
Do you like coming to Alexandra Park and driving? Because a lot of southern drivers who don't drive here a lot find it a bit disorientating because they don't drive here very often.
Yeah, I'll probably be a bit the same too. It's taken me a little bit to get used to going this way around. You know, you feel like you're going a lot quicker than you probably are. And to be fair, I haven't had that many drives here, but you're usually coming up here for nice ones, and I'm very fortunate, you know, to be driving for Mark, and yeah, another nice one tonight, so it makes my job a bit easier.
Last week you got your 600th career win. God, that sounds like a big number. When you think about the weight of that number, it must seem like a lot of races and a lot of wins.
Yeah, you probably don't really appreciate it as much as you should until, you know, you sit down and you think about it. But, you know, 600 times going round is a lot, but to win 600, you know, I'm pretty wrapped and, you know, like, and proud of, like, you know, all the support I've had, and yeah, hopefully we can keep kicking some winners home.
Okay, is there a target? I know you don't want to tell people because it's embarrassing to say you're going to become the first female driver in New Zealand to get to 1,000, but you must have thought of it.
Oh, not really. 1,000 seems like a big stretch to me. Like, you know, you say 600's a big number, but 1,000 seems like a lot. But I'm just happy ticking away, driving as many winners as I can, and hey, if we can get to 700, I'll be pleased.
Knowing Samantha, I reckon she wouldn't have thought of it, Michael. She's not that type, but gee, it's been a great achievement thus far. And so pleased for Monaco Grace as well, part owned by Dick Taylor, of course, who set QE2 alight back in '74, along with those All Blacks that are involved in the Woodlands partnership. So she's a pretty nice horse, this. I reckon she'll work her way through the grades, and it's surprising it took her so long to win a race, but when you consider the races that she's been in, like the Southland Oaks, it's probably not that surprising.
Well, look, and gate speed's going to be a really big help for her. In those 3-year-old races, it's going to be, you know, tough as we get later into the year, because effectively the horses are really going to be for Greg. You know, you're going to be racing amazing dream type horses if a True Fantasy can hold her form by then. But gate speed's a big help. When you can get to the marker pegs, no reason to think she's not going to be a contender for a race like the New Zealand Oaks. Really breath of fresh air, Sam is. I mean, I know you guys in the South Island get to see her a lot, but we don't see her often in the North. I mean, she's had the 2 wins there at Alexandra Park, and such a pleasant person, such a wonderful driver, Greg. I think I was flicking around the channels on Saturday and she drove a winner somewhere, and then she drove another one on Sunday.
Yeah.
So she may not be thinking about 1,000, Greg, but here's my prediction. She will get to 1,000. Yeah. She will become our most successful, winningest ever harness racing female driver, and what a wonderful thing to think that, you know, somebody could join that 1,000 winning club when you think of the other names in it. But yeah, she can drive, and you know they're good drivers, Greg, when they drive for a lot of trainers at lots of different tracks in different directions, standing starts, trotters, mobiles, and they still keep winning.
Yeah.
And that's the sign of a good driver. Yep. And she's just a very good driver, times 602 or something.
All right, I think you've found one for us in our next race we want to preview, the Magnus Benroe Mia's Classic it is. I think it's about the 6th or 7th running of it, Michael. Let's have a look at the market. $1.80 for Manhattan, who was actually trained to win a race at Alexandra Park by the Dickies. It was like a futurity final. Bob Butt brings her north for this excellent race for $40,000, but you're keen on one at $7 here, Michael. Harder Than Diamonds, Mimia Coco $4.50 and Claudia Schiffer at $5.50.
I thought it was a 3-horse race, and I think Manhattan's way too short. I think $1.80 is very short. She's been good in the South Island, but she hasn't been beating, you know, good horses. She's done a good enough job against some pretty handy horses. Harder Than Diamonds is an interesting one, because back in November she beat Major Jealous, who 2 starts earlier had beaten Copy That. So she's clearly very good. She came back and won fresh up this campaign, then had a 4th, which things didn't really go her way. Then last time she was bad, like bad. Finished 9th. I put that to Andrew Neil. I said, why was she bad? And he said she was disgraceful. He said, well, it took me a week to get over it. So he took it pretty badly too. And he said, look, her blood was really bad. So they took another blood test again a week later. And they were so happy with the new blood test, they actually paid the $2,500 late fee, Greg, to be eligible for this. So if the blood wasn't good, they wouldn't have paid the $2.5K. I think she's every bit as good as the other 2 horses. I think Mimia Coco is a horse who's been in and out of form, but is in really good form now. So she clearly has a chance. I just think that Harder Than Diamonds has at least the scope of the other 2. If they were all the same odds, I wouldn't like her. She opened up $7 and $1.90, Greg, $2.80 top 2. That's very good odds, because last Saturday morning she worked with Cranbourne and she stayed alongside him and worked very well with Cranbourne. Now, I'm not saying she can do that on race night, Greg, but I think these three completely dominate the race. I think she can't miss top three. She can win the race, and she's the third leg of my multi I mentioned earlier. I went Self-Assured, I went Sunday Sun to win, and I went her top three at $1.90, Greg, because I think it's big overs, and I'm happy to back her for a smaller stake as a winning chance. Mimia Coco's a definite hope. Manhattan, yes, obviously can win. Bob's team is flying, Greg, but I think $1.80 is very short for her.
All right, that's a good preview for you of Alexandra Park's big night, Cups night there on Friday evening. Time for us to take a short break. When we come back, we'll hear from a young gun down south, try and find you a couple of winners, and also learn a little bit more about the Woodlands yearlings going, from the yearlings rather, Weanlings going to the sale there on Thursday. In the home straight, in your box seat, yes, brought to you by your stable of sponsors. It is Weanling sale time with New Zealand Bloodstock Standard Bred. Let's hear a little bit more about the Woodlands draft.
Woodland Stud are not only known for being one of New Zealand's biggest breeding operations, we are also making a name for ourselves as a top vendor at both the annual yearling and weanling sales, where our stock go under the hammer. Top trainers from all over Australasia buy from our draft. Here are some of the reasons why.
I like to buy from Woodland Stud because they're well bred, well educated, well fed, well developed, and they breed to sell.
The reason why I like buying from Woodland Stud, they had two of the best stallions when I was kicking off. It was Better's Delight and American Ideal. I've had an association early on with Charlie. He leased me a couple of young ones, so I thought, well, I'll go to Woodlands and have a look at them, and I've had really good success from buying from there, so why stop now?
Yeah, we've had enormous success, and of course our cup winner here, being the Mercedes, we bought him for $7,500, and we bought Hard Copy, who's won $1.3 million for, I think it was $4,000. We haven't had to spend an arm and a leg to acquire these horses. You know, we got the results.
But they're always turned out very well, and usually there's pretty well-bred horses there, so you know it's a good place to go, and I've had a bit of luck there.
I highly recommend buying a Woodland stud horse. We've had a good run out of them, and yeah, they're well looked after, and you know, good breeds to get into.
Get your very own Woodlands bred star at the NZB Standardbred National Weanling Sales, held next Thursday, the 26th of May at Karaka in Auckland. Find out more at woodlandstud.co.nz. Your success is our success.
Great supporters of the box seat. Michael, what did you make of Ray Green there, the mad professor? Copy that. Yeah.
One of racing's special people is Ray.
Oh, he is. Yes, he is.
Big opportunities this week, Greg. There's some proper horse flesh there. I looked at about 8 or 10 of them of myself and thought I could buy that. You know, if you can get them for the right money. There's pinhooking opportunities. There's opportunities to give them to a young trainer, do a deal, get them up, try and sell them. There's lots of opportunities. I think if you're someone who goes to the yearling sales and gets beat, Greg, and it happens to all of us, this is the chance to go, because a lot of the big players don't play throughout this market. I think it's a really important sale, and good luck to everybody involved. But yeah, I liked at least 8 or 10 of them, Greg, where you said, look, if I owned that on Friday morning, I wouldn't have buyer's regret, which is always something nice to have, not to have after the sales.
Yeah, you're right there. New Zealand Bloodstock Standard Bred, go online, check them all out, and if you want to bid online, you need to register, so get involved in that on Thursday afternoon. All right, let's go to Addington Raceway Friday night. They're running alongside, of course, the big meeting from the park. Here's Lovin' the Port. We've always known, Michael, that he's got rare ability. He just hasn't quite been showing it since Cup Day when he won Fresh Up, but he beat Harold Smith here and he beat him up.
Look, he's got a bit to do too, Greg. He's still got maturing to do. See his gait there. He's just a little bit choppy. He's going to be a far better horse in another year. Clearly, he's an open class horse. He's an open class horse, Greg, and he'll just keep winning in these winterish months for as long as Phil wants to keep him going, but once he cleans that gate up, Greg, which he will do because Phil's such a good trainer, he's going to be racing in the best races in a year's time.
Of course, his other son, Brad Williamson, will take the drive this week because Matthew is driving Cranbourne in the Trillion Trust Auckland Cup. Here's invitation only. He only runs 4th, but this is a good field, Michael. Nothing wrong with this, running in behind Sandwave and company. He charged the last 100 metres. He does have to come off gate 9, but it's 2,600 metres this week in race number 1. I reckon he could be a good way to start a multi for you. He's a smart horse, invitation only.
Yeah, he is. And he's taking a bit of time to fill out those hopples like he's a big, long, striding type of a horse. And again, I think he'll continue to get better too, Greg. But yeah, they're not a barn who's ever scared to go forward on their horses, Greg, and that's a big help. When they draw barrier 9, if they're super conservative, just don't back them. Even if they win, just don't back them. But those stables who are not scared to put their horses in the races, Greg, barrier 9 just gives you a bigger dividend. And often it's not really much of a concern because once they move, very quickly, a lot of horses are behind them.
It is very important this week at Addington as well as a number of drivers that will be at Alexandra Park on Friday night, so you need to get the latest driver updates, and of course those markets will be at 4 o'clock on Thursday night. Young gun driver down south, he's got a pedigree to be quite good, and as part of their big meeting about a month ago now, we got an opportunity to find out a bit more about Tristan Larson.
Tristan, your first driving win was Duke of Dundee for your father Kirk. What do you remember of that?
I just sort of remember popping up the inside and put a few links on them and happy days, eh?
Duke of Dundee sailing away. They say you never forget your first, and here's one Tristan Larson will remember forever.
Who do you work for currently?
Brett Gray and Kirk, my dad as well, so just help both of them, so yeah.
Was it always going to be harness racing with your dad being a trainer, or do you want to do something else, or what was your background there?
I probably didn't get into late really. I sort of did, sports and that, and then I sort of had a drive on one and I thought, geez, this is alright, so it was about same as everyone, eh?
What are your ambitions in the sport? Long term, short term, just drive more winners, or do you want to go into the training ranks, or what do you want to do?
I'll probably just climb up the ranks a bit more, I guess, get a bit higher up in the juniors premiership and that, and chug away, yeah.
He's already got 16 wins in the bank. We wish him well in the future, and he's got some real ability, no question about that at all. We said last week we were hoping to catch up with Gary Woodham. They've got a board meeting this Friday, so we'll hold that over for our final show in this campaign, if you like, for next Tuesday's record. Hits and misses from last week. Republican Party bounced back for the punters after the mishap the week before. 6,000 there. Franco Marek just keeps on winning, Michael. Someone had 6k on him at 380. He started a lot shorter than that. And some decent plays last week on Sunday Sun and Self Assured.
And some of the misses, Greg, they were horses where wide barriers came into play. Queen of Diamonds, 3,500, 10,000 Fernley Cash. Whenever you're going to have a big bet, punters, if they've got a bad barrier, ask yourself this question: can this sit parked and win? And if the answer isn't in your head, yes, don't back it. That's the question, Greg, for when you're drawing wide. Or, of course, can it get the lead in this race? That's what I always do, Greg. Often I love a horse. I think I just love this. But when we got back to the race, back at Cambridge, I thought, can Self Assured sit parked and win? I thought he can, and that's why I backed him.
Yep.
But if you're going to be betting big punters and harness, and your horse is drawn wide, is it going to clear them straight away? Probably not. If it sits parked, can it sit parked, and am I comfortable being on a lap from home at 2.4 if it's sitting parked? Just a little hint there, Greg, from someone who's got his ass kicked a few times by the bookies.
You're not alone there, Michael. Let's have a look around the nation to see where you can race this week in harness racing. The Winton meeting Thursday kicks off before lunchtime, 11:44 there. Addington Raceway, they've ended up with 9 there. The first there is at 5:47, and it runs alongside this quality meeting. Group 1's galore, the Trillion Trust Auckland Cup, the Reharvest Row Cup, and the Group 1 Brecon Farms Northern Trotting Derby, for mine, the race of the night. Timaru, they have the Winter Cup down there. It's a decent sort of race too, with the likes of Cyrus and Manjum Informed Hazer, so that's a good race there on Sunday. Rakiro Racing Best Bets, we both only placed last week, Michael, so that's not good enough. What do we need to do this week, and where are you laying your wedge in terms of our best bets?
I actually found it a really tricky night to win, Greg, only because the obvious horses are quite short. I'm happy to go a multi. I'm happy to go the multi with Self-Assured and through Sunday Sun. In fact, to be perfectly honest, Greg, when people text me on Friday, which happens a lot on Friday, that'll be my tip. It'll be just take the straight out multi for $2.10. It's actually very fair. But what I would also do, I've told people I've taken Harder Than Diamonds straight out. If you're looking for one other bet where you think, well, this is going to be all way too short, I want just one thing early in the night. A horse called Son of a Sun's a pretty good horse, Greg. It's better than maiden grade, and it'll be winning earlier in the night. So there's a few things to play around there, but I actually think it lends itself to a multi-night, Greg, or Harder Than Diamonds is your best chance of getting a little bit of a spoil somewhere.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to go with Masterly in that Brecon Farms Northern Trotting Derby. I know how good Highgrove is, but he was awesome there last time. He can only improve at the park, I think. Drawn up beautifully again to move forward, put himself in the race. And Bob Butt said something to me the other night. He said, look, when I drove him at Rangiora, I went out in the prelim at Alexandra Park and he said, two totally different horses. He's just a genius, P9. Just whatever he does in between times, he said, he just knows what he's doing, gets them bang on, and that's why I've made him the bet of the night. Riverton at Winton, Escobar is Jason Broad's best bet. But Michael, for me, the race of the week is that Northern Trotting Derby with Brecon Farms. Which one are you most looking forward to?
I love the Auckland Cup, Greg. It's a race that means a lot to me because obviously I live about 5 k's from the track, but the horses who have won it have been great horses. And I don't know if there's a great horse in the race this week. Maybe Self-Assured's going to turn out to be a great horse. Maybe someone will topple Self-Assured and embellish their own career. Maybe Spankin will get the ultimate redemption, Greg. The one thing I know is this. The horse who wins the Road Cup this week and the horse who wins the Auckland Cup this week, Greg, will never forget their names.
Yep.
And that's what matters, and that's why, among other reasons, I'll be there Friday night, and that's why, even if it's in the back end of May and it's getting close to winter, Greg, it'll be a special night, regardless of how many people turn up there on Friday evening.
Yep, and I'll be one of them looking forward to getting there. Michael, good luck to all of the connections and all of the big races. We'll wrap it all up in 7 days' time.